This is a season of Christmas stories, and no doubt you are like me, you have your own Christmas stories. Those stories of all those times of beginnings and endings, when someone was born, when someone died, when someone was supposed to show up on a plane or in a car and travel with you to a place that would be snowy or seaside where you would celebrate Christmas. Stories of being at grandma's house or at home or far away. The first Christmas, the last Christmas. I remember one year sitting on the floor of Watauga Medical Center one Christmas Eve night. My father was a patient in one room, my mother was a patient in another. It was a long time ago, back when we could still visit those whom we love who are sick and in the hospital. I don't remember what was wrong with them then, but I do remember that someone had sent them this gigantic poinsettia, and I was starting out of one of their rooms carrying this plant, and just as I reached the door of the hallway, I just sort of sank down onto the floor and held the poinsettia in my lap, looking down the hallway to the nurse's station at the very, very distant end, with its Christmas lights blinking into the silence and the shadows of that long hallway. And I idly thought about all those unlucky ones who had to work this Christmas Eve, but who were making the best of it on behalf of their patients. And then I remember another Christmas, the very best Christmas story I have to share. That took place 24 years ago when I played the part of Elizabeth in the Christmas story. The woman they called barren, the one they called too old to conceive. But because nothing is impossible for God, I got to stand before a strange alternative Mickey Mouse decoration as the woman who had to work every single Christmas at this particular Chinese orphanage handed me my baby. Then on that Christmas day and every Christmas day and every other day since then, my beautiful daughter has been God with me, God incarnated in this world, bringing all of her gifts and blessings to us all. How would you write all the stories of your Christmas journeys? If you could, what would you write? What would you say? Where are the mysteries? Where is the sadness, the endings, the fresh new starts, those unlikely characters with their unlikely influence and purpose in all of your stories? How have you managed this odd and painful year to find joy, the theme of this Advent service, a year full of darkness and full of light? Over the years, seeking for both fun and wisdom, I've started in the churches where I have served the Epiphany Stars tradition, and this tradition involves every congregation member and visitor receiving an Epiphany star that has a word written on it, and that word will be your guiding star for the new year ahead. It's instructive, it's kind of goofy and kind of fun, and it's also sort of spiritually spooky in a way, how that word may unfold to prepare one for the new year and what is going to lie ahead. This last year, 2020, my word was expand. Yeah, and expand is precisely what I've been physically doing during this COVID time. And at first, this word did not really inspire me very much at all, but as always, I've sought to discover its meaning as it unfolded over the last profoundly meaningful and difficult months. And considering my star word, expand, has also invited me to ponder anew the subject of joy in Mary's song, this particular special third Sunday in Advent. Expand, that word means to grow, to push back, to open up, to go beyond the boundaries and the limits, to allow for possibilities, to allow for the unknown. Expand is a humble word. It means that there must be more. It insists that there's somewhere farther to go, below the surface, into the depths. Expand implies that the darkness exists beyond which we have not ventured, and below which we can see that there are depths as yet unexplored. Expand implies that there is more, that we are more. It is command, it is invitation. If you believe you can only forgive just this much, then expand. If you want to invite joy to fill up the wells of your soul, invite more joy. Expand. I hear in Mary's song the exuberance of one who is saying yes to a God whose borders are fluid and whose love is transformative and whose gospel is peace. Mary's song, the Magnificat, includes in it the demand that the centers of power and privilege also expand, to open up and include those who are lowly. The song sings that God's very life in creation will be the catalyst for new possibilities. Having this star word in this COVID year has reminded me that the opposite of expand is contract, and that we can do that. We often do that when we're in places of fear and anger and violence. We can sit in a mentality of scarcity when times are hard. Provincialism, refuse, shut down, contract, keep out those on the margins to protect ourselves, we think, to protect what is ours, thus resulting in the exact opposite of joy. This year of COVID and this relentless, joyful song of Mary, it seems to me, exemplify the hairpin turns of the spiritual journey. COVID has certainly had and has its spirals and its uphills and its depths of despair and its moments of silent gratitude, all woven into one. The mysterious invitations to try to find joy in the least likely of places. Khalil Gibran reminds us in his great work, The Prophet, our joy is our sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find that which has given you sorrow is what is giving you joy. And when you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Joy and sorrow expand, contract. God in process in the seasons of growth. And we can see that in the seasons of growth we are in right now as we move toward the winter solstice. Light and darkness, joy and sorrow, ebb and flow, expand, contract. The cycles are all part of Spirit's great wisdom. As we move through the tides and the cycles, it is important to remember that we need them all. Because expand without contract is explosion. And unrestrained growth results in choking vines and greed and manifest destiny and cancer. It is essential in God's great movement and wisdom in the world that there be joy and sorrow expansion and contraction. Joy to the world, joy in your heart, joy in spite of COVID and deep loss, joy as we wait and watch and work for justice and expect the birth and expand our horizons, and like Mary are about the important business of pondering it through the long, long nights, all those mysteries of the heart. The invitation, it seems to me, is to remember, to trust, to invite our best Christmas angels to invite us again to the great message of every Advent story. Do not be afraid, for behold, there are good tidings of great joy being shared with the people. I'd like to close with this sweet story from the great writer Reynolds Price. Not because this story gives us any easy answers, because it doesn't, but because it reminds us to do the expectant waiting that this Advent calls us to give it. It also recounts one of his most transformative spiritual experiences, and it's happening in the depths of his spiritual experience and growth. Here is what he writes. It came as a sound, one syllable, not an action, and it came late at night. I was staying at my cousin Marcia's house, and she was sleeping soundly some yards away on the sofa. I wakened in the dark, and against my better knowledge was pouring through my somber prospects. A realistic estimate included paralysis, dependence on others, untouchable pain, and the absence of work. Maybe death, or worse, was near. Quadriplegia now seemed worse than death. My spinal cancer could kill me. Death would solve at least all those other quandaries. In my black trough, I remember looking up at the ceiling and addressing what I must have thought was God, that last unchangeable bafflement. How much more do I take? I breathed. There was a long, silent pause, and then a voice at normal speaking strength, and the one word, more. Neither male, female, nor repellently neutral, but thoroughly real or near at hand, though well beyond my sight and unheard by Marcia, came that voice. More. How much more do I take? More then. No ease yet, and no further reply of any such presence, when then all the other answers I got came in other forms, mainly human help. How much more pain do we take this year in COVID? How much more pain do we take? More. How much more joy do we get? How many more births will there be? How many more Magnificats will we sing? More. More. Because joy and sorrow always come together. Joy and sorrow come together this Christmas. Every Christmas. And they come with the promise of birth. Birth never comes without the labor of expansion and contraction. But there is always that promise. Always the promise. More. Amen.